Trudie, thank you so much for joining. Introduce us to everybody that's listening.
Oh, it's great to be here, Stuart. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Trudie Fell, and I'm the founder and CEO of BelleVie. And we are reinventing the future of care because actually we've got a big problem. You'll be really aware, care's in crisis. It has been for a long time. And governments, the private sector, and pretty much every developed country doesn't know how to support our ageing population. So the problem is quite well known, but finding a solution is a bit difficult, and BelleVie is there doing that.
Nice.
I'm delighted to tell you a bit more about it.
Yeah, please do. So tell us the solution. What is the business then?
So have you heard of a model called Buurtzorg
No.
in the Netherlands? No. So lots of people in the UK haven't. But he's revolutionised community nursing over in the Netherlands. Been going about 16 years now. And started with a nurse called Joste Blok, who I've had the pleasure of meeting, who was fed up with how nursing was working. There was high employee turnover, low employee satisfaction, low patient satisfaction, and he thought there's got to be a better way. And he came up with this model called Buurtzorg, which literally translates to neighbourhood nursing. And it's about small self-managing teams that provide holistic care and support. And and it's really working over there. And we've taken a bit of that Dutch magic and we're bringing that to the UK. And we've got a Buurtzorg-inspired model of self-managing care teams to support people to live their best lives in their own homes.
Nice. Very, very inspiring. So why is this a problem in the UK? What's currently going on?
So at the root of the care crisis is recruitment of care workers and retention of care workers. That's the problem. So we've got an ageing population. Demand for care is outstripping the supply of care workers, and it's getting worse every year. So we lose about 1,100 care workers a day just leaving their jobs. And yet we're going to need 29% more care workers by 2038 just to keep pace with our ageing population. So the problem is that families can't find good quality, consistent, reliable care for their loved ones. And it's really tough. Pretty much every council we've spoken to has got a list of people who need some care and support at home, but they just can't find care provision. Wow. And it's really tough.
Wow. So your business is able to find people and put them into these locations, or what's the actual logistics of the business?
There's lots of people who've attempted to address this problem, but quite a few of them, especially tech-enabled startups, they think, okay, we can use tech to find a solution. But actually, all they're doing is digitizing the existing model, the existing way of working, which is a time and task model, very transactional, ticking tasks off a list. And we wanted to go deeper and say, well, why do we have a recruitment and retention problem in care? And fundamentally, it's because care workers, they like the work, often very much like the work, love the work, but they don't like the jobs that they find themselves in. Pay is part of that gets the headlines, but it's not just pay. It's things like, the hourly rate is important, but actually it's things like not being paid for a whole shift. So, and the financial instability. It's about being valued and respected. It's about training and career progression. Those are the sorts of things that mean that people that could and should make great care workers end up leaving. So, so we went deeper to the root cause and we've completely changed the model. So we've ripped up the time and task model, replaced it with this Dutch-inspired model for inheriting some stuff from Buurtzorg.
Nice.
And created empowered, self-managing teams of about, say, like 8-ish or so care workers in a team, recruited from their local neighbourhood to support people in their local neighbourhood.
Wow.
And
with care backgrounds, or they can come from non-care backgrounds?
They can come from any background. The important thing for us is that they've got the values that chime with ours, and that they would make a great carer for your parents, for your loved one. And actually the result is that more than half of our recruits have never worked in care before.
Wow.
Which it fits with our model really well, but also it means we've got a genuine solution to the care crisis because we're bringing in new people, attracting them to care and keeping them in care. And that, with scale, means that we've got a solution.
Yes, awesome. So is the business a social business? How would you describe it?
So I describe us as social impact. Okay. So there is a legal definition of a social enterprise company, and we structured ourselves as a very straightforward, limited company, limited by shares. So it's the same as other for-profit companies.
Yeah.
And we are a for-profit company, but at the heart of what we do is social impact. So I describe ourselves as it's for purpose, for profit. And and that for me is what social impact is about, because I really strongly believe that private enterprise not just can, but should do good in the world. So we're an example of that.
Yeah, it's quite an incredible number. 1,100 people a day are leaving these types of roles. And I think you mentioned to me that the care sector is larger even than the NHS. Is that right?
It is, yeah. Lots of people don't realise that, but there are more people employed in adult social care than there are in the NHS, which is quite amazing. And there's lots you see in the press about the NHS being poorly funded and some genuine issues there. But actually, we've got bigger problems in social care. And when social care is struggling, guess what? Then the knock-on effect is on the NHS.
Yeah.
So when there are about 13,000 people in hospital right now today who don't need to be in hospital. The reason they're there is because there's no care provision for them at home.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. So incredible mission, incredible vision that you have as well. What is your background? Is this something you've done all your life, or explain to us, what were you doing before this?
No, so a little different. Although I should go way back to when I was still in full-time education and I needed a part-time job, as you do, and the job I got was one of a care worker.
Okay.
And I loved it. I thought, well, I'm doing something here that has purpose and meaning, and as opposed to bar work, waitressing, as many of my friends were doing at the time. And as well as loving the job, it also really opened my eyes to something that shocked me. When I told people about this great job I'd found, and I'd get their reaction of like, "Oh, aren't you the bright one who's doing university and all of that stuff? Yeah." I was like, yeah, I'm doing that. But anyway, I've got this amazing job. It's great. I put a smile on someone's face who hasn't seen anyone else for ages. Like, oh, okay. And I just thought, why is no one else valuing this really important and difficult job?
Totally.
It's emotionally, physically tiring. It's really hard. And that sense of unfairness hit hard and stayed with me. So I did carry on with the university.
Yeah.
I've got a PhD about pain in chickens, which is just really random, but people remember it. And a love of science and data during my PhD got me into software development. Okay. So then I worked as a coder for about 7 years or so in the noughties, and then went client side. I've had some fantastic opportunities. Yeah. From building front-end teams, UX, SEO, working with the front-end digital teams, right through to heavy lifting back-end architecture teams and multi-million-pound projects. But then when I got to my early 40s, I thought, actually, I need something with more purpose, and this isn't doing it for me anymore. And so after quite a bit of soul searching and Google searching, I ended up making a big leap and changing to BelleVie.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I would imagine a lot of listeners probably relate to purpose and, what purpose means for them. What were those moments where you realized that I don't feel like I have purpose in my day to day, and how did you go and seek that? Because it's quite for a lot of people I speak to, it's a difficult thing to really understand black and white what that means. So how did you go through that, especially when you're in your early 40s?
Yeah, so it took a while. I was in a great job working for the Telco 3, who really invested in their people and leaders. It was lots of fabulous years working there. But there were some very definite things that changed. So, for instance, as a woman working in IT, I often was the only female in the room. And working in different areas, I thought, actually, we would be better overall if we had greater diversity. Yeah. And not just gender, but every form of diversity, including diversity of thought. So I decided to start something up and founded a community called Women in Tech, and it grew and snowballed, and we we got the CEO's approval, and we arranged all sorts of things. And one of the initiatives we arranged was to working with an organisation called Mums in Tech, June Angelides, who you might know, and we hosted her to bring in a cohort of mums, and I got a bunch of folks from my team to help provide some of the training, and we could do all this for free. It was really good fun for us. And we had a bunch of mums in one room. We had their babies looked after by the nannies that June's organised it in the boardroom next door, which made for great photos. And so it was organising all these things alongside the day job. And I thought, actually, I'm really enjoying doing something that's making a difference to the world, making a difference to people. And I'm also really enjoying starting something from scratch and getting a following, getting people behind an idea. And then I thought, am I enjoying this more than the day job? And that was a big trigger for me, thinking, okay, it's time for me to find something different and move on.
Interesting. So what about the pressures of salary and, that you had, I would imagine, working at 3 well-paid job? Living in the UK isn't cheap. So what was going through your head there? And okay, purpose versus reality of living? Because again, I think there'll be a lot of people listening that can really relate to that, but also the challenge of making that jump and saying, you know what, I'm going to go and find this.
Yeah, and that's hard, And I genuinely didn't for a couple of years. I didn't know what I was going to do to find that fulfillment that I wanted. I was looking at the charity sector. I thought, could I be an IT professional for a large charity? But there was a bunch of stuff in the press at the time, and I thought, actually, I'm not sure that I want to be working for one of those bigger charities. And then it was following organisations like Mums in Tech that led me to be introduced to an organisation called Zinc.
Okay.
And that was kind of my stepping stone that helped me make that leap from, as you say, I had a permanent, well-paid job in IT. Yeah. So it did feel like a really big leap. I was sensible. I'd saved some money. You've got to go into this knowing what your personal financial runway is. That's important. And then I applied for a program at Zinc.vc, who they build social impact businesses, and they do a great job of it. And there's lots of different kind of accelerators and incubators out there. So my advice would be for people to look for the one that matches their values. Yeah. So for me, the motivator was to social impact, and Zinc it's all about social impact and about missions. And they announced the next mission, which was to support people who've been left behind by globalization or automation. And as a technologist, passionate about tech and automation, but thinking we have to do it in the right way. Yeah. We can't, what happens if it's just the people who own the technology or the people who own the businesses who get rich, and actually normal people doing the work on the ground just lose their jobs? Yeah. That's not the future of tech that I want. So how am I going to be part of that world and a more responsible view? How can I? So it was all about creating great jobs. Yeah. And I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. And this Zinc program was for people focused on a mission, who had ideas about where they wanted to go but didn't have a product yet. So that was the other good match. It was the right stage for me. Yeah. And it was for people who hadn't found a co-founder yet and wanted to find one. And then, fortunately, I got selected. So that was pretty cool. And I ended up in a group of 50 people at the same stage as me, all passionate about this same mission. So yeah, that was kind of how I made the leap. And and Zinc provided a little bit of funding, which has actually gone up as the years progress. So there are routes to do it. Yeah. You've got to be brave.
That's awesome. So you decided at what point that it was a startup that you were going to go and build? Because I don't think you'd built a startup before. So this was your first time going in.
Yeah, it was my first time. I didn't know the startup ecosystem at all. Wow. Yeah, I remember
But
reading.
literally Googling from scratch.
Yeah,
like-
honestly, I was Googling everything from scratch. You know, when you hear founders talking about raising money, and it was like there was a different language. I just hadn't got a clue. It's like, what is a seed, Series A, blah, blah, blah. You know, watching Dragon's Den on TV was
Yeah.
about as close as I'd got. That's not as a typical experience. So yeah, I had a lot to learn.
Nice. So Zinc was this opportunity that you applied for, and it was based in London.
Yes. Yes.
And you then went into this cohort of like-minded people that were all on this mission that they had put forward. And this was, what, 5-6 years ago?
So yeah, this was 2018.
Okay,
Yeah.
wow.
So yeah, in the days before we'd heard of COVID and
Okay,
things
nice.
like
So
that.
yeah, so about 5 years ago. And what was it like? So you turn up, you've come from this corporate background, you're now in this cohort with 50 like-minded people. Like, for the listeners, like what was that like, and how did you then take that forward to be successful through the cohort?
Well, despite months of worrying whether I could make this big leap, and getting some really good advice, I had a great mentor at the time, Jax. I hope she's watching, who helped me say, well, you know, like, why not? And so after all these months of worrying, then I arrived, and literally on the first day, and definitely by the end of the first week, I thought, this is it. I'm surrounded by some amazing people. Even if I don't start my own business and this doesn't work out, I will have learned so much about entrepreneurship, about startups, about myself. And I'm sure that doors will open. So yeah, surely you have to surround yourself by the people that you
Totally.
know, people like yourself that you want to be more like them. And it felt really positive.
Wow.
Yeah.
And at that point, did you have this idea in mind, or were you coming in just like, I'm into the mission, I don't know what this business will be? Like, explain that part about the actual idea.
So at the time, I knew that it would be about the future of work. That was really important to me. Fair employment has been a common theme that's motivated me throughout my career. But that's really broad. And I was also very aware of the care crisis because of my previous experience of working in care. But at that point, I couldn't see a route to how I could possibly have some kind of impact on that. So there was a big gap between those two. And the opportunity at Zinc was to work with different people, explore different areas, and they challenge you to go and try things you've not done before. Yep. And it was through that, worked on all sorts of things. And in fact, there was an idea about getting more men working in care that I worked with another chap on for a bit, just to explore and experiment. And we were reading about the Buurtzorg model, and I just went, hang on a minute. I get this. Because I haven't mentioned it yet, but one of the things I'm most proud of in my IT career, so my 17 years in IT, is transforming departments and teams from a very command and control, hierarchical, the typical triangle structure setup, to small self-managing agile teams, which now in IT is, you wouldn't set up an IT department doing anything other than agile. But being part of that and of that change, and then walking through departments of people and seeing that they're more motivated, that they're happier at work. That's why they're more productive. That's why the business case that I've got some senior bod to sign off stacked up. So when I was there on Zinc with all these opportunities to learn everything and was reading about the Buurtzorg model, I thought, yeah, I get this, because this is what we've been doing in IT. I don't think I'd have made the leap from IT to care work if we hadn't seen it working successfully in nursing in the Netherlands. But when we did, that was basically the light bulb moment.
Yeah.
We thought, yeah, we're going to apply that to the UK.
That's amazing. That must have given you so much confidence that you'd done that previously and you could piece it together with the care solution that you've now gone on to build.
Yeah, and looking back, it's really interesting because there's all these bits of my life, like choosing to do care work as opposed to any other part-time job at the time. The desire to get involved in agile transformations and in fact move to other areas of the business because they asked me, could you support agile transformations in another section and another section again? All of these bits fell into place, and I think that's part of it. No one really has the structured career path that they might want to, but if you are true to your values and you follow your passion, and then opportunities arise where they fall into place, but keep working hard at the things that attract you, the things that are important to you, the things that really matter, and then stuff falls into place and you can end up founding your own business.
Yeah, it's amazing because it sounds like the accelerator was quite hugely significant for you because it supported with finding the co-founder.
Yeah.
It supported with your integration into the startup ecosystem, supported with funding, and it supported, I guess, with network and the belief in what you then went on to do. So I'd imagine there's a lot of people listening that are maybe considering being a founder. You would recommend the accelerator model as that entry point from your personal experience?
Well, for me it worked because it was such a leap. So as a first-time founder, I had so much to learn.
Yeah.
I don't think I could possibly have done that if I hadn't found an accelerator. So everyone's got to work out the right route for them.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different types of accelerators and incubators out there. So what stage are you at? What direction do you want to go in? What support do you need? Be realistic about that. Everybody needs some support. And how are you going to find it?
Yeah.
And then look, research the accelerators and incubators out there, and there will be one that's the good fit for you. And look outside this country as well. There was out of the 50 of us in Zinc, actually, I think it was about 2/3 had come from different countries. We had it was a really multicultural, great mix. It's about 50-50 male, female, age range from, I think, 24-ish up to 56, something like that.
That's awesome.
And lots of diversity in this particular cohort. But and I was really impressed by the people who'd, uprooted themselves from their home country, moved to London for a 9-month program, not knowing where it would end up. But it's quite exciting.
Very inspiring. So let's fast forward to today. Where is that business that was first an idea, looking at this model in the Netherlands, to today? Like what revenue are you at, just for people to get some perspective of the scale that you've been able to achieve?
Yeah. So we've been operational for 4 and a bit years. Our revenues are now over £100,000 a month. So we're at 1.1 annualized recurring revenue.
Nice.
It's really positive. We've got our directly employed self-managing teams of care workers in 2 geographic regions. We're in the Thames Valley, Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire. We're up in the northeast, up in Northumberland, where we do lots of good work with the council. Our customers are a combination of families who fund their own care, NHS, and also local authorities. I'm very proud that our net promoter score is 95%.
Wow.
So we get some wonderful feedback from the people we support and from the families, which, when you're working really long hours, I just kind of scan down the moments channel in Slack and look at some of the wonderful messages and photos and think, this is why we're doing it. We have some fabulous teams. We're creating great jobs for people. It's hard work, but for our wellbeing support workers, which is the name chosen by our carers when we were co-designing this at the start, they put a huge amount in, but they get a huge amount out. We want to create more of those jobs, and I'm really proud of that. And earlier this year, we were actually named the most outstanding home care provider in the UK. So
that's awesome.
Pretty chuffed.
Congrats on that.
Thank you. That's
so,
a big one.
So the business is now over £1 million in annualized revenue and ARR. What was that journey like? Because for a lot of businesses, I know it's a very, very tough journey to get there. How do you reflect back on the kind of 4 and a bit years of building revenue, and like some of those key challenges that you had to overcome, and any actionable tips for people listening?
Yeah, crikey, there's such a long list. How long is this podcast? There's a lot to do, but you break it down into chunks and you work out, well, where do we need to go next? So I suppose a big part of it is really understanding your product and market fit. So getting to know the people that you're serving, so the users, and in our case, there's different types of users. There's the person receiving support, there's the family members, there's the public sector, so we spent a lot of time, and the Zinc program was great for this, really delving into that. And so, for instance, and also there's different ways to get help. Like we found a little bit of grant funding. The first grant we won was a 5K grant from the Wellcome Trust, and they supported us to work with the National Association of Care and Support Workers to do a survey where we got 260 odd responses. It's quite a big survey about the physical, emotional and financial well-being of care workers. So that helped us get, a wealth of data, plus interviews, shadowing care workers, meeting people receiving support and finding out how difficult it was for them to get that support. So I'd really encourage people to know their target market and get under the skin of what the problem is they're trying to solve. That's a really key one. The other key area is fundraising. It's hard to do it, and you've got to raise cash, and you start, and the investors are saying, "Oh, yeah, it's a great idea, but you need a bit more traction." And you're thinking, "I need some cash so that we can get going and show you some traction," and that keeps going. It's like the first few years, especially, that felt like we were just kind of chasing our tail a bit. So you've got to do as much as you can to get as much traction as possible to persuade the investors, and just keep inching.
So how did you do that? Like, how much have you raised over the last few years?
We're just in the process of our third funding round, actually. So we raised a pre-seed round of 850K, and then we raised a seed round of 1.6 million. Nice. And we've also had over £1 million in grant funding on top of that, which has really helped us. That helps us specifically in developing the technology, R&D. So I suppose there's different points at different stages. So if I was trying to, advise people starting out, when you first get going, then angel money, angel investors is really important. We took advantage of SEIS, the tax relief, nice. Which at the time was 150, but has now gone up to 250,000. So that's great, because these wealthy, high net worth individuals, so typically, like, if you find someone who perhaps is a former entrepreneur, because they also make great advisors, they've made a load of cash, they're really comfortable, but they want to also do some good in the world as well, like in our case as a social impact organisation. So we were on a hunt for those people, and the SEIS is great because they can offset their investment against their tax, and there's a route, if the startup fails, they can get something back. So I'd strongly urge people to, in a similar situation, you can get an advanced assurance very easily, which means you'll be eligible, and then you can sell that to your angel investors. So for our first round, they were really important, and you can also use something called ASAs, and which means that you can bank some of that angel investments immediately, and then wait until you close a funding round, and then and that's when you have to spend some money on lawyers and get all the documents done and all the rest of it. So that was a really useful way of us getting cash in that first year. We did put a bit of our own money in as well. But not a huge amount, because we didn't have a huge amount. But you don't have to be super rich to start your own business. There are definitely routes.
Nice. So I think one of the stats that I read, it was fairly recently, it's a tiny percentage of venture capital goes to female founders. So how did you navigate that world, and why do you think you were successful when the odds are very, very low in comparison to males, for example?
Do you know what, Stuart? It's bonkers, isn't it? Why on earth do female founders get less money?
Crazy.
Than, the stats don't look right. But there's another stat which I'll give you, which is that organisations with a female founder are more likely to be successful. So quite frankly, I think the VCs need to wake up. So that's the first bit. And also to give confidence to those female founders, because you can look at, and it's, massive stereotyping, but there are differences between the genders. And sometimes there's a confidence gap. But I also think that's, there's a reason why in every country where access to education is equal, girls outperform boys.
Yeah. I
think it's probably the same reason that I was at home doing my homework when my brothers were out playing football in the street. They're like, yeah, whatever, I'll do it. That's so, we're hard workers. Why not invest? But sometimes it's having that self-belief to go for it. And it is possible. And I definitely made very good use of mentors and advisors to help me every time I was feeling really nervous about pitching and thinking, why on earth are they going to write a check of, the early stage angels were writing checks of, say, £20,000. And I couldn't imagine, being in that position. But actually, that's tiny for them.
Yeah.
Turn it round and say, well, actually, what you've got is amazing. If they miss out on this opportunity to get in really early when the share price is so cheap. So I needed, quite a lot of confidence building because female founders can do it. Is it harder? I think it is. Shall I tell you a story about one investor? In fact, I've got a couple of stories here. So out of all the founders you've met, I bet the blokes that you meet have never been asked by an investor, are you the pretty one or your co-founder?
Horrible.
So that was interesting. I was like, okay, all right, whatever. And there was another angel investor who looked like he was a dead cert for investing. We were talking about monies and amount of money and terms. And the meeting was overrunning a bit. And I said, oh, my co-founder's be here in a minute. Would you like to meet her too? And so she arrived. She did great stuff. She's got an amazing CV and background, and he was really impressed. He was chatting more generally and found out that she had a really young child. And from that point on, he kind of backtracked. He couldn't work out that all the stuff that he'd been impressed with, all our traction to date, well, clearly she was a parent. We're both parents. So, he didn't sign the deal. But in reality, did we want him on our cap table? No. Yeah. So, ignore the dinosaurs. They're there. But also there are good investors out there who actually will get really aggrieved by stories like that. Yeah. And they will want to, do the right thing and make up for some of the others that are out there.
For sure. But I think it's an important topic to cover because it's not, I don't see too much discussion about it. And I think it is that blocker for a lot of female founders that I even meet. It's like that belief that they can go and raise venture. I can't remember the exact percentage. It was a couple of percent of all venture deployed last year was to female founders. So you've gave some great tips, seek mentorship, have that confidence. Anything else that you think for female founders out there to go and raise capital if that's what they choose, or maybe even some places to go and look for angels that would back them?
Yeah, because that's the hard thing. You've got to find the angels, and then for later rounds, you find institutional investors. So that's all about networking. So lots of different groups. I'd sign up, get yourself out there. There's lots of online stuff, particularly post COVID. Huge communities, so you can do a lot just from at home on your laptop. One that I will recommend is look up landscape.vc, and on there you can ask to apply to be part of their anonymous founders Slack group. It's a huge Slack group. You can ask anything, all the daft questions, and it's basically a whole bunch of very active founders, entrepreneurs with all sorts of different experience who can answer your questions. So that's a really good place to start. Find groups that are matched for you. So as a female founder, there is provision out there. There's lots of people who are doing stuff to help level the playing field. So take advantage of it.
Yeah.
We applied for a Capital Enterprise. They did a how long was it? A few months kind of course for a cohort looking at minority groups. Gave us support on fundraising, our pitches, really practical support, all free to take part of. You just got to take part in. You just got to apply and get selected. So look out for all of
Awesome.
those. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, great tips. So talking about your co-founder, a lot of people that I speak to that are considering being founders that don't have a co-founder, that's a bit of a risk for them. And I know when we spoke previously, you mentioned how important values are to you, and you've mentioned that already today. How did you talk through values with your co-founder that you'd only met, I guess, for a few months to then decide that you're going to work together for whatever period of time that you go on to? Like, give us some insight there.
Yeah, it's really tough finding a co-founder. I mean, people talk about it like marriage, and it is.
Yeah.
It's a really intense relationship. So you've got to find somebody who you get on with, but importantly can work with. Like I met quite a few people who I got on brilliantly with, but realized afterwards, like, yeah, I couldn't found a business with them. I'd go for a drink with them, but not found a business. Testing things out, your working styles, things like that's important, and not being scared to have those conversations about what matters. And that way you find out about their values and your own values and whether they're going to fit. So I co-founded BelleVie with an amazing woman called VLM Pierre. And when we were considering this, we thought, actually, like, we need to have a proper chat about whether we're going to co-found together. And we went for lunch and we talked about the things that mattered to each of us, and how best to support each other.
Just openly about family, friends,
everything. So the things that made us tick, the things that were important to us, and for instance, conversations about how we'd prioritize family and work, and what where the lines were. So really really key stuff from the start. So we knew what was important to the other person. And that steered us through. We have had some really high highs, but also some really low lows, and we know each other so well, and it's been brilliant. I couldn't have co-founded BelleVie with a better person.
Amazing. And did you literally write those ideas and those points down, or how did you keep like a source of truth?
I've got a digital notebook, and actually after that lunch, I jotted down kind of my thoughts and some key points that VLN shared with me, and I'd go back to them. I'd reference them, and those values are they're key. It's important.
Yeah. And did it guide you through like the values that you then wanted for your employees and your team members? Like, how did you bring that to life? Because again, like I think a lot of founders struggle to have their values materialize through the business, to find alignment. So how did you do that?
Yeah. So like early on, we had to think about, well, what's our company's brand? What do we stand for? What do we mean?
Yeah.
When it was just an idea, we had a mood board. That was quite good. We cut out pictures and stuff and put keywords on there. And from that, words came up, which then became our first set of values for the company. So actually knowing our own values, what was important to us and what we wanted out of our business, helped us determine what the values for the business were. And we've iterated on those original ones a few times, but actually there's, it's more about tidying up the words, really. Actually, the core is still there. So, for instance, BelleVie is about building trusted relationships, and that runs through everything we do. And that came up in those first conversations.
Nice.
So we're not about micromanaging care workers and and ticking tasks off a list. This is about trusting and empowering people.
Yeah.
And that's hard to build in a culture. It takes time. Things like community, that's really important to us. And that came up in those early conversations.
Amazing.
Living life. So our company values were set really early on. And it persists in everything we do. When people are on induction, our new starters create a one-page profile where they talk about what matters to them.
Nice.
Which is basically what they value. So it's their values and how best to be supported. And we create one of those profiles for everyone we support as well. And it's those sorts of tools and mechanics that help create an environment where people really know each other, build relationships, and therefore build trust.
Yeah. And
go back to what VLN and I first talked about when we wanted to found a care company that's really reinventing the future of care.
Yeah. The thing I loved when we previously spoke was how the values supported, the transition for your co-founder out of the business. And I think it was really powerful the way that those initial conversations allowed you to be really aligned at the point of change. So I think for listeners, it'd be amazing to just hear how that went and again, how you stayed true to one another.
Yeah, because actually it's been really positive. So, VLN and I met at the start. We founded BelleVie. We went through a huge amount together. But then after the second funding round, the VLN was struggling with her energy levels, and we had some really honest conversations, and we looked at different areas that she could work in. But actually BelleVie was growing up. It wasn't the hectic, chaotic startup that it had been 3-4 years before. And it just wasn't there. And she didn't want to, and the amazing thing about VLN is she always put the company first. She didn't want to risk our next funding round. And she also didn't want to make a false commitment to future investors. And she said, actually, I think it's time for me to go. I think there are people who could do this role better than me. And the reality is she was great at the early stage stuff. But I'm not sure that where we are now is the best fit for her. But she still adds value. So she's a non-executive director on our board, and in fact, she's the one with the most startup experience because she had previous startup experience before this. So
love it.
Like she's incredibly valuable. But yeah, it was those tough conversations. We went back to what mattered.
Yeah.
What we value. And for me, it was really important that she did what was right for her. And for both of us, it was really important that we did what was right for the business. So we ended up with a nice, steady, calm transition of VLN out of the business, talked to the board about what happened to her shares that hadn't vested, came up with a mechanism by which they could go back for an employee-owned pool. Nice. We want to set up an employee-owned trust in the future. So it was all very calm and steady.
Wow. Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
for a lot of
and we're still really good mates.
Yeah, it's so nice because again, a lot of founder exits, a lot of the time there can be conflict, but the way that you managed it sounds really inspiring for other founders listening.
Yeah, I mean, there are quite a lot of stories you hear where there's conflict. And I think, and some people outside are going, oh, wow, should we be worried about this? I wonder if the numbers are probably too small, but perhaps if you looked at female founders, maybe you'd find different stories to exit.
Probably.
I mean, ultimately, both of us put BelleVie first. And if you do that, then you're going to make the right decisions.
Love it.
So, yeah.
So the business is at this kind of key revenue point now. Looking back over the last 4.5-5 years, if you were to be maybe critical of yourself and what you've built, how could you have done it better? Like what would be some tips that you can share for other founders that maybe they can avoid making the similar mistakes, if you have any?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, there's lots of little things, but I think the biggest thing that because I was leading on fundraising, could have done better is had a much clearer understanding at the start of which investors we wanted to target and why. And to do that, we had to really know kind of who our organization was, and therefore, because an investor relationship is, it's hard to get out of once you're in there. So you need to make sure you find the right investors. And I'll be honest, when we first started, it was a scattergun approach. We were emailing our pitch deck to anybody and just delighted if they wanted to talk. And then some of those, they'd kindly say, oh, we're not a great fit. But I could have worked that out beforehand, and I could have focused my energies. And each round, actually, we've got better at saying, no, this is our organisation. This is the rate at which we want to grow. These are the things that are important to us. So realising that we needed purpose-led patient capital meant that we needed to target specific investors and look at other ways of raising money as well. If I'd worked that out earlier, where our fit in the big ecosystem, then I'd have probably saved a lot of late nights. I'd have saved a bit of work.
The thing that you mentioned, you raised over $1 million in grants.
Yeah.
Like, I think for a lot of people, they maybe are unaware, or they don't really consider some of those other venture routes that are not through traditional venture capital, through VC funds or whatever that may be. Any quick tips on grants and how to seek grants and the process? Like, was it positive, negative? Like, how would you talk about grants?
Yeah, and I think, my naivety when I started was, I thought, okay, well, there's the, Facebook Uber type world where you apply for a VC, you pitch to a VC for investment. And that's how it works. But actually, it's a lot more complicated than that. So you've got to work out what sort of organisation you are and where you fit. For us, we're really attractive to grant money, partly because of our social impact. Yeah. So most of the grants that we've raised are through Innovate UK. So that's government money to support research and development in themes which are challenges the government want to solve. So healthy ageing has been a big part of that. Now, they're not easy. There's a lot of work. It's also really different. I've been there I can spend the morning writing a pitch deck, which is very like salesy and big messages and very aspirational. And then the afternoon looking at a grant application, which is where they're asking for risk logs and project plans and details. I mean, it's really different. But I think that blended capital, looking for what's out there, so combinations of grants and debt as well, and as well as equity investment, getting a mix, knowing what mix you could go for, testing and learning is really key, and then working out what you're good at and where you might need some help. So you can pay people to write grant applications for you. Okay. We've never done that, but I have rung a few up saying I was thinking about applying for this. What do you reckon? And they'd say, oh, no, your stats for that one wouldn't work. But actually the stats for this other grant are probably better for you.
Nice.
And getting their inside information. And then getting a quote from them going, nah, we can do this. Because there's tons of advisors out there. So instead, keep looking. It's a bit harder work. Write your best, the best you can. Get advisors to help you tweak the words to make sure it's and you can always resubmit to Innovate UK if you fail the first time. So keep going.
Love it. So I guess one of the final questions I have is, what would be your advice and guidance? Like, you've done an incredible job as the founder of BelleVie, for people thinking about building a social impact or a social good business. Like, what would be your advice to tell them to go for it?
It's really rewarding. So I talked earlier about making that leap from a well-paid, comfortable, permanent, secure job. And you know what? I've never looked back, Stuart.
Amazing.
So I suppose that's the first bit of information, is it's great. It's really hard work, but the reward and sense of purpose is amazing. So I'd say to people, just go for it.
Love it.
And even if you spend a year, 2 more, whatever, trying something, is that really going to look bad on your CV? You were brave, you made a leap. So if you're worried about failure, don't let that put you off. Because do you know what? you might be the one that succeeds.
Yeah, and change is a big opportunity. So
Exactly.
amazing. So all right, one final question. How can people find you? Well, it's two questions. How can people find you, and what is the dream for the business? Like how many lives do you want to help and support? Like what is that final vision that you have, or not final, but the evolving vision today?
So I'm happy to be contacted on LinkedIn. I'll spend some busy days and some quiet days, so if I don't respond immediately, but I'll get. But yeah, always happy to chat on LinkedIn, and people can follow our progress. And if there's anything useful in advice, then you might see that along the way. So that's grand. And in terms of BelleVie's vision, well, our ultimate vision is we're reinventing the future care. And the vision that we're aiming for is to build a society where everybody in the care ecosystem is valued and supported.
Amazing. Well, look, I have personally loved chatting to you. Very inspiring, and makes me think about building a business for social good as well. So thank you for your time. Lovely connecting, and we'll speak soon.
Oh, it's a pleasure to chat. Thank you.